People think relationships end because of one big fight, some dramatic betrayal, or a sudden moment where someone says, "I'm done." But that's not how it usually happens. Most relationships debt slowly, not because someone wakes up and hates their partner, because they start realizing they feel more alive with someone else. If he's with her right now, you don't need to rip them apart. You don't need to confront her, compete to head, or turn it into some soap opera. The truth? You just need to become the emotional experience he craves the most. Here's the secret. People don't always choose the person who makes sense for them on paper. They choose the person who makes them feel something they can't ignore. If she gives him comfort, you bring excitement. If she gives him routine, you bring surprise. If she gives him validation, you give him challenge. You become the missing piece he didn't even realize he was starving for. Now, this is where most people get it wrong. They think being better than the other woman means being prettier, smarter, or more successful. But in reality, what makes a man's mind wander isn't competition in looks. It's contrast in experience. He can love what she gives him and still be pulled toward you because you feed a part of him that's been quietly neglected. And here's the darker psychological truth. We are wired to chase what feels just out of reach. If you give him everything instantly, you become predictable. But if you give him just enough to feel close to you, while still leaving him with questions, he'll find himself thinking about you even when he's in her arms. He'll compare the little spark he feels with you to the dull comfort he started to feel with her. You're not there to replace her. You're there to become the version of connection he didn't know was possible. A little more passion. A little more curiosity. A little more, I never know what she's going to say next. And when you do that, his brain starts rewiring. He starts noticing all the ways his current relationship feels smaller in comparison. And the moment the balance tips, when his desire for you outweighs his comfort with her, he won't be able to help himself. He'll make the choice and it will feel like it was entirely his idea. When you want him to choose you over someone else, the most powerful move isn't to directly attack or criticize his current relationship. It's to simply become the emotional experience he can't get from her, because human connection isn't always about who looks better, earns more, or even spends the most time together. It's about how someone makes you feel deep down in those private moments when no one else is watching. And if you can give him a type of emotional nourishment that he's quietly starving for, you become irresistible to him in a way that's hard to explain. Think about it like this. If she makes him feel secure and stable, that's wonderful for him. But if she never makes him feel that electric spark of passion or that giddy excitement of being wanted in a playful, unpredictable way, then over time he will start to notice that something is missing. Your role is to identify exactly what that missing thing is and then naturally embody it without forcing anything. Because when a man experiences a part of himself that has been asleep for too long suddenly waking up in your presence, he won't want to let that go. Maybe with her he feels cared for but not deeply admired, or maybe she admires him but never truly understands his deeper emotional world. Whatever it is, you step into that gap effortlessly. Offering what feels rare, precious, and exciting, you become the antidote to whatever quiet dissatisfaction he's been feeling but hasn't spoken out loud. And you do it without begging for his attention or trying to pull him away from her. You simply show up in a way that lights up the parts of his personality that have been dimmed in his current situation. The beauty of this approach is that it doesn't require you to compete head-to-head with her on the same qualities. In fact, you avoid that entirely. Because if you try to beat her at what she's already giving him, you'll always be playing catch up. Instead, you give him something new, something his mind begins to crave without him even fully understanding why. He starts associating you with a rush of emotions that make him feel more alive, more confident, more playful, more desired. And that's when the balance shifts, because no matter how content he might be in his current relationship, once he has experienced this missing emotional element with you, he will naturally compare it to what he has with her, and every time he notices the difference, it draws him in deeper. It's not about being louder, flasher, or more obvious. It's about being exactly what his soul is quietly asking for, but hasn't been given. And when you master that, you don't need to convince him to leave her. He will start convincing himself that the connection he feels with you is the one he should be building his future around. Focusing on contrast, not competition, is what truly makes you stand out in his mind, because when you try to compete directly with the woman he's with, you're stepping into her territory and playing her game. And even if you manage to win in one area, you're still just another version of what he already has. But contrast is different. Contrast makes you unforgettable because it offers him a completely new emotional and sensory experience. It's the difference between warm and cold, sweet and salty, night and day. Our brains are wired to notice changes in patterns more than similarities, so when you offer him something that feels strikingly different from what he experiences with her, it disrupts his emotional rhythm in a way that pulls him toward you almost unconsciously. Maybe she is all about stability and predictability, which can be comforting, but you bring energy, playfulness and spontaneity. Maybe she's very nurturing and soft and you bring a little edge, challenge and mystery, or maybe she's very social and high energy while you create a deep, calm intimacy that allows him to truly breathe. Contrast doesn't mean being the opposite of her in every single way. It means identifying the emotional and behavioral qualities she doesn't provide and amplifying them in a way that feels authentic to you. When he experiences this contrast, he's not just meeting another woman, he's meeting a whole new version of himself, one that feels awakened, more alive, and more in touch with his desires. It makes him wonder why he doesn't feel this way with her, and that question alone plants the seed that something might be missing in his current relationship. The beauty of contrast is that it makes you impossible to replace because you're not a copy of what he already has. You're an entirely different category of experience. And once a man's emotional palate has tasted something new that deeply satisfies him, he can't simply want. Every interaction with you becomes more vivid in his memory precisely because it stands out against the background of his everyday life, and even if he tries to stay committed to her, that contrast will haunt him in small moments. When he's bored, when he's uninspired, when he's craving a feeling he can't quite name but knows he's had with you, he will remember the way you made him feel, and that memory will quietly compete with the reality he has with her without you ever needing to fight her directly. You're not positioning yourself as the better version of her. You're positioning yourself as something entirely different, something she can't imitate because it's not her natural way of being. And that's what makes contrast such a powerful pull. It's not about proving you're better, it's about showing him there's more out there than what he's settling for right now. Feeding the part of him that feels neglected or unfulfilled is one of the most powerful ways to make him gravitate toward you. Because even in relationships that seem perfect from the outside, there are always small gaps, little emotional needs or desires that aren't fully met, and these gaps often go unnoticed until someone comes along who naturally fills them. This isn't about prying into his personal life or interrogating him about what's wrong. It's about paying close attention, listening between the lines, and noticing the moments where his energy shifts. When a man feels like you see and understand a part of him that others overlook, it creates a bond that's hard to replicate. Maybe his current partner supports him in practical ways, but never really celebrates his wins or makes him feel admired for his ambitions. Maybe she's affectionate physically, but rarely engages in deep, meaningful conversations that challenge his mind. Maybe she gives him companionship, but not the sense of adventure or excitement he secretly craves. Whatever that gap is, you position yourself as the one who naturally and effortlessly fills it. You become the place he goes to feel whole, the space where he experiences that missing piece without even having to ask for it. And the more you feed that part of him, the more he will start to associate you with a sense of emotional satisfaction that he can't get anywhere else. This works on a deep psychological level because humans are drawn to what completes them, not just in a romantic sense, but in how we choose our friends, our hobbies, even our daily routines. When you offer him that emotional nutrient he's been missing, you become essential in his mind. It's no longer just about attraction, it's about fulfillment. And fulfillment is addictive. The key is to give it in a way that feels effortless, so it doesn't look like you're trying to win him over. Instead, it feels to him like you just happen to be the person who understands and meets that need without judgment, without keeping score, without making it conditional. And the more he feels that with you, the more he'll notice its absence in his current relationship. This is where the quiet comparison begins, not because you've told him she's lacking in some way, because he will feel it every time he moves between the emotional connection he has with you and the one he has with her. Over time, the contrast between feeling seen, valued, and nourished with you versus feeling that subtle emptiness with her will grow stronger. And once a man truly experiences what it feels like to have that missing part of himself fed and fulfilled, it becomes almost impossible for him to go back to living without it. Using mystery and unpredictability to keep his thoughts on you works because the human mind is naturally drawn to what it can't fully figure out. When you are entirely predictable, he can mentally place you in a box and feel like he knows exactly what to expect from you. But when there's an element of surprise in the way you communicate, the way you respond, and the way you show up in his life, he can't help but keep thinking about you. Mystery isn't about playing games or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about allowing parts of yourself to be revealed slowly, keeping him curious and engaged. When every interaction feels like there's more to discover, he starts anticipating the next conversation, the next meeting, the next chance to learn something new about you. Unpredictability keeps his emotional state active and heightened, because when a person never knows exactly what you'll say or do, their brain releases small bursts of dopamine each time they interact with you, and dopamine is the chemical tied to desire and addiction, so even subtle shifts in how you interact can make a big difference. Maybe one day you're warm and teasing, and the next you're a little more introspective and reserved, not in a way that feels inconsistent, but in a way that shows you have layers he hasn't explored yet. Maybe you choose unexpected places to meet or share stories about parts of your life he never imagined. These moments create a mental hook, and every time he tries to define you, something new changes the picture in his head. With his current partner, he likely knows the rhythm, the patterns, the habits, which can feel safe but also dull over time. You are the contrast to that. Someone who keeps life feeling fresh and alive. The trick is to never let all of your personality, interests, and emotions be revealed in one go. You want to give him the sense that he's always just scratching the surface with you, and that there's always more to uncover. This unpredictability creates anticipation, and anticipation is one of the most powerful emotional forces in attraction. It's what makes him check his phone hoping for your message. It's what makes him replay conversations in his head trying to understand you. And it's what makes him compare the excitement he feels around you to the steady routine he feels with her, even if he doesn't consciously realize it. The difference between the thrill of unpredictability and the comfort of familiarity starts to feel like the difference between being fully alive and just existing. And once a man experiences that aliveness with you, it lingers in his mind long after you're gone, keeping his thoughts returning to you over and over again. Subtly highlighting the spark he feels with you versus the routine with her is about letting the emotional contrasts speak for itself without you ever having to directly point it out. When you're with him, you want to create moments that feel alive, moments where he laughs without thinking, where he feels truly seen, where there's an unspoken current of chemistry running between you. These moments stand out in his memory because they feel different from his normal rhythm. You don't have to tell him his relationship has become predictable. His own mind will make that comparison when he notices how he feels after spending time with you. The key is to make these interactions so naturally enjoyable and emotionally stimulating that he can't help but replay them later. Maybe it's the way you look at him when you're listening, fully engaged, like nothing else in the room matters. Maybe it's the playful banter that makes him feel younger, freer, more energized. Or maybe it's the way you challenge his thinking and make him see the world in a slightly different way. These are the things that create a spark, tiny flashes of emotional and physical aliveness that light up his nervous system. Over time, those sparks become a craving, because once a man realizes he can feel this kind of connection, the absence of it starts to feel like something is missing from his life. You're not there to criticize her or diminish what they have, because the power of this strategy comes from subtlety. You simply give him an experience that is rich in energy, emotion, and authenticity, one that he can't replicate with her no matter how much he tries. It's the way you make him feel excited just by walking into the room. The way your conversations feel like they could go on for hours without getting boring. The way your presence makes him want to lean in closer. In contrast, his time with her starts to feel more routine, more expected, more like going through the motions. And that contrast works in your favor without you lifting a finger to force it. Humans are wired to seek novelty and stimulation, and when he feels both comfort and excitement in your presence, he will naturally start associating you with a higher quality of emotional experience. It's important to understand that you're not trying to create big, over-the-top moments every time you see him. Sometimes the most powerful sparks come from small, subtle exchanges. A shared glance that lingers a little too long, an inside joke that only the two of you understand, a playful challenge that makes his heart beat faster. These little things accumulate in his memory until the thought of life without that spark starts to feel dull, and once he's aware of that difference, he can't unfeel it. The comparison between what he feels with you and what he feels with her will only grow stronger until it becomes impossible for him to ignore. Letting him believe the decision to leave her was entirely his idea is what makes the shift in his loyalty feel natural rather than forced. Because the moment he feels like you are pressuring, convincing, or manipulating him to choose you, his defenses will rise and he may even push back out of pride. But when the thought comes from within him, it feels authentic and self-driven. This means you need to play the long game and focus on creating conditions where he reaches the conclusion on his own. You do this by consistently offering an experience that feels emotionally richer, more alive, and more in tune with who he wants to be, while never framing it as a competition or an ultimatum. The less you try to directly influence his choice, the more he will feel in control of it, and control is important for any human decision when you are simply yourself, confident, warm, magnetic. While still maintaining your own boundaries and life outside of him, you signal that you are not chasing or trying to take him away from anyone. You're just showing up in a way that makes his mind naturally compare the quality of connection he feels with you versus with her, and every time he notices that difference, the scale tips a little further in your favor. You can also subtly reinforce his sense of ownership over the choice by never speaking badly about her, never asking him to leave her, and never making your interest in him conditional on him ending that relationship. Instead, you let your presence, your energy, and your emotional depth do the work for you. This creates a safe psychological space where he can explore his feelings without feeling judged or rushed over time. As the emotional gap between his experiences with you and his experiences with her grows wider, he will start imagining what life would look like if he chose you instead. And because you've never pushed him in that direction, he can believe it is a vision he came up with all on his own. Once a man feels that choosing you aligns with his own desires and decisions, he will not only make that choice more decisively, but he will also defend it fiercely because people fight harder for choices they feel are theirs. In his mind, it won't feel like he left her for you. It will feel like he simply moved toward what made him happier, more alive, and more fulfilled, and because you never forced his hand. There will be no lingering resentment or guilt to sour the connection. He will believe the shift was inevitable, the natural result of following what felt right, and that belief will make him even more committed to you once the choice is made